thanks to the Doctor Who's 60th anniversary specials coming up, the arrival of the 14th and 15th Doctors is almost upon us, and both of them are confirmed to each have a companion coming along with them. But before we get the return of a previous companion with the 14th Doctor and a new companion with the 15th, why don't we look back and see how many companions each of the previous Doctors had? Yo, what's up, gamers? It's me, Kipster MC, and before we get to the arrival of the 15th Doctor as well as the new companion Ruby Tuesday, why don't we rank all the previous Doctors by how many companions each of them had. Now I've got 3 rules for this list. Rule 1, television companions only, so no Big Finish companions or novel companions or anything like that, which unfortunately means Frobisher is not going to count for any companion lists. Sorry. Rule number 2 is that one-off characters such as Kazran Sardik from A Christmas Carol or Adelaide Brooke from The Wars of Mars are not going to count as full companions for this list, so they will not be included for the rankings either. And rule number 3, companions who traveled with more than one Doctor, such as Clara Oswald, Sarah Jane Smith, or Adric, will apply to each Doctor they traveled with, so it won't just be a matter of who they traveled with first. And to start off the list, at the bottom, it's gonna be Paul McGann's 8th Doctor, obviously, since he, like how he only had one TV story, only had one companion, that being Dr. Grace Holloway, who, funnily enough, was the reason why the 7th Doctor regenerated into the 8th. Guess the Doctor thanked her by teaming up with her for a TV movie and then never seeing her on screen again. Although she was meant to return full-time if the TV movie got picked up for a full show, but that ended up never happening, so like other things in the 8th Doctor era, Grace Holloway was only around for one appearance. But she is technically considered the 8th Doctor's companion anyway. And up next is going to be the 6th and 7th Doctors, each with 2 companions. The 6th Doctor first traveled with Perry Brown, starring in The Twin Dilemma, well, technically starring at the closing minute of The Caves of Androzani, when the 5th Doctor regenerated. They kept traveling with Perry up until technically the beginning of the Trial of the Time Lord, because the stuff in the Mysterious Planet and Mind Warp is technically the Doctor, the Valeyard, the Inquisitor, and the other Time Lords present, watching footage from the previous adventures. But then after that, the 6th Doctor then traveled with Mel Bush, starring with the end of the Trial of the Time Lord from the 6th Doctor's timeline. But for Mel's timeline, we actually don't know when he started traveling with her. It's a bit weird. Trial of the Time Lord had some kind of like confusing, timey-wimey stuff going on, so the beginning of Mel's adventures with the Doctor, we never actually truly see them. The earliest we get is when, during Terror of the Vervoids, the Time Lords are watching the footage of the Doctor's future when he's already traveling with Mel. And then Mel, from some point after that, is brought into the trial at the beginning of The Ultimate Foe. It was weird. But Mel continued traveling with the 6th Doctor up until his regeneration, which means that Mel was also the first companion of the 7th Doctor, starting with Time Durrani, and then traveling with him up until Dragonfire, where Ace joins along and Mel leaves. Now, we were originally going to see Ace's departure in a story that would have been titled Thin Ice, which was the title that was then used for a 12th Doctor episode. But since season 27 never happened, we never got to see Ace leave on screen. But we know that she did leave during the 7th Doctor era, because 1, when Ace returns and she talks about her falling out with the hologram of a previous Doctor, it's of the 7th Doctor. And 2, the 7th Doctor is traveling alone at the start of the TV movie, meaning that Ace had to have left by that point. Now, next on our list is going to be the 9th Doctor with a total of 3 companions. Now everyone, of course, fondly remembers the 9th Doctor traveling with Rose Tyler and Captain Jack Harkness, although technically speaking, John Barrowman at the time wasn't listed in the opening credits. It wasn't until the 10th Doctor era that happened, but he still did travel with the 9th Doctor for multiple episodes. Now, granted, everyone forgets about the other 9th Doctor companion, the short-lived Adam Mitchell, which, to be fair, nobody liked him. I mean, he got kicked out of the TARDIS after his first adventure. Wasn't a very good companion, which, granted, was intentional. He was meant to be a failed companion, and the character did his job there. Now, why am I not including Mickey as a companion? Well, because, he didn't really become a companion until the 10th Doctor era, so as a result, I'm not counting him as a 9th Doctor companion. But then, up next on our list, each with 4 companions, are the 11th 12th, and 13th Doctors. Kind of funny that all three of those Doctors are in the order together and they all have the same number of companions. So the 11th Doctor is most well known for traveling with Amy Pond and Rory Williams, a good old husband and wife deal, but technically speaking, Rory wasn't a companion for as many episodes as Amy, as Rory didn't start traveling with the Doctor until The Vampires of Venice, before dying in cold blood, getting resurrected as an Auton, and the Pandorica opens, and there's an entire Doctor resetting the universe thing, and then Amy and Rory start traveling with the Doctor again at the end of the Big Bang, and then after that, Rory's a 100% full-time companion. And then, of course, there's River Song, who didn't appear in every single story from the 11th Doctor era, but she appeared in quite a few and was a very important character throughout the era, especially in Series 6. Now, technically, River did debut in the 10th Doctor era, but she wasn't really a companion then since we didn't know yet who she really was. All we knew is that she was someone the Doctor knew in the future. And then the final companion of the 11th Doctor era was Clara Oswald, who continued traveling with the 11th Doctor, starring in The Bells of St. John, and then staying with him up until his regeneration in the Time of the Doctor, which then brings us to the 12th Doctor, who traveled with Clara at first for 2 whole seasons, up until technically Face the Raven, but then there was a whole entire pulling Clara out of her time stream stuff afterwards, and then she's went off in her own TARDIS alongside Shielder. A completely normal reaction to someone dying. Pull them out of their time stream and give them a time machine. Then after that, the 12th Doctor had one final adventure with River before having Nardole and Bill Potts as his companions for the rest of his run. But after the events of the Doctor Falls, Bill and Nardole both left the TARDIS, with Nardole staying on the Mondasian colony ship and Bill becoming a Cyberman, then getting turned into the oil liquid thing by Heather from the pilot, and the two of them traveling off to time and space together. So the 12th Doctor regenerated alone, and thus didn't have any companions to carry over to the 13th Doctor era. But then the 13th Doctor started off with 3 whole companions. Yasmin Khan, who stayed throughout the entire 13th Doctor era, Graham O'Brien, and Ryan Sinclair, the two of whom end up leaving at the end of Revolution of the Daleks, although Graham would ultimately come back for the power of the Doctor. They don't really explain why he was back or what he was doing in the volcano in the first place, but hey, he came back. Ryan didn't, though. But then for Flux, the Doctor and Yaz were joined in by a new companion, Dan Lewis, who stayed throughout the entirety of Flux and through Eve of the Daleks and Legend of the Sea Devils before leaving early on in The Power of the Doctor after a near-death experience kind of like caused him to be like, yeah, no, this is too dangerous. I'm done, sorry. And then up next on the list, we have 4 Doctors together, each with 6 companions, those being the 2nd Doctor, 3rd Doctor, 5th Doctor, and 10th Doctor. That's a lot of Doctors with 6 companions each. The 2nd Doctor's era started with Ben and Polly from the 1st Doctor era, but then, one story later, he was joined by the best companion from his era, Jamie McCrimmon, who, fun fact, appears in more episodes than any other companion in the entire show, due to 2 main reasons. Reason number 1, how many stories he was around for, because he was there from early on in Season 4 all the way to the very end of Season 6, and 2, how many episodes there were per season, because there were still like 40 or so episodes per season at this time, split into several different stories. Then the faceless ones, Ben and Polly both left, deciding to stay home in 1960s London, but the Doctor and Jamie were then joined by Victoria Waterfield, who stayed for a full season from the Evil of the Daleks up until Fury from the Deep. And then one story later, in The Wheel in Space, Zoe Harriet joined the Doctor and Jamie after a fight with the Cybermen, and stayed up until she and Jamie were both sent to their homes with their memories of their travels with the Doctor erased by the Time Lords. And technically I'm also counting the Brigadier as a 2nd Doctor companion, since he made his debut in The Web of Fear and returned for the Invasion, playing a major role in both stories, and impacting the future of the show as a result. Plus, in the 5 Doctors, the 2nd Doctor was paired with the Brigadier as the companion of choice. Therefore, even the people making the show consider the Brigadier to count as a 2nd Doctor companion. Now, for the 3rd Doctor, first I'm going to discuss the 3 regular companions, those being Liz Shaw, Jo Grant, and Sarah Jane Smith. With Liz Shaw being around for the 3rd Doctor's entire first season, that being Season 7, before deciding that a character who had a vast amount of scientific knowledge didn't really fit the role of companion well of being the person to provide exposition to, you know? Then after her departure, we got Jo Grant, who stayed for 3 whole seasons, first debuting alongside the Master in Terror of the Autons before leaving at the end of The Green Death. And then for the 3rd Doctor's final season, we got got the best Doctor Who companion of all time, Sarah Jane Smith, who made her debut in The Time Warrior, which is also where the Centaurans made their debut, and she kept traveling with the Third Doctor until the Third Doctor's regeneration in Planet of the Spiders. Now, there are 3 other characters who also technically count as Third Doctor companions, those being the 3 unit family members of Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart, Sergeant Benton, and Captain Yates, all of whom were around for many Third Doctor adventures and played major roles in the unit-based stories. Now, Mike Yates did leave UNIT before the Third Doctor's era was over, thanks to the events of Invasion of the Dinosaurs, but he did come back for Planet of the Spiders, meaning that all 3 of the main unit members were present for the Third Doctor's final outing. And then for the 5th Doctor, at the start of the run, he kept the 3 companions from the end of the 4th Doctor era, those being Adric, Nyssa, and Tegan Jovenka. Now, this trio of companions ended up becoming just a duo of companions with the death of Adric and Earthshock, but then, in Modern Undead, they were joined by Vizsla Turlough, who was originally an agent of the Black Guardian sent to kill the Doctor before realizing that, oh hey, the Doctor's a good guy and the Black Guardian's a bad guy, I should be allied with the Doctor instead, because he's actually a good person. Nyssa ended up believing in Terminus, though, but then in The King's Demons, we got Chameleon, a shape-shifting robot companion who would only appear one more time in Planet of Fire, where he was destroyed. Now, Tegan did leave in Resurrection of the Daleks due to just her adventures with the Doctor no longer being fun due to how much death there was, which, you know, that's a fair reason to leave. And Turlough would also leave in Planet of Fire, returning home. But Planet of Fire would be the debut of Perry, who ended up joining the 5th Doctor and being witness to his regeneration in the Caves of Androzani. Now, the 10th Doctor, meanwhile, started off with the 9th Doctor's main companion, Rose. Then Mickey Smith would join along and Sarah Jane Smith would return. However, Mickey left after only a few adventures, and then Rose became trapped in the parallel universe. Then after that, the Doctor would travel with Martha Jones for a full season. But then in Series 3's 3-part finale, Utopia, The Sound of Drums, and Last of the Time Lords, Jack Harkness would return as a companion for those 3 episodes, where he, Martha, and the Doctor would fight the Master before Martha and Jack left after defeating the Master, with Jack returning back to Torchwood and Martha returning to her family. But then that left the companion spot wide open for David Tennant's final season, resulting in Donna Noble, the Best Martin series companion, who is also returning for the 60th anniversary specials. Let's go! Haha! Now, Donna would travel with the 10th Doctor for an entire season, before Rose, Martha, Mickey, and Jack, and Sarah Jane would all return to help out the 10th Doctor and Donna fighting against Davros and the Daleks in the Stolen Earth / Journey's End. They would all leave once the threat was dealt with, though, and Donna had to have her memory wiped after the whole entire human Time Lord Metacrisis stuff in order to prevent her mind from burning, since she absorbed the Doctor's mind, which was too much of a mind for a human to handle. And as a result, for his final few episodes, the 10th Doctor technically traveled without a true companion for the end of his adventures, even though he had multiple one-offs, such as Jackson Lake. That's not Jackson Lake, that's the governor from The Walking Dead. There's Jackson Lake. Adelaide Brooke and Wilfred Mott. And finally, at the top of our list is 2 Doctors tied together each with 10 companions. Those being the 1st Doctor and the 4th Doctor. Now, the 4th Doctor's reasons for having so many companions shouldn't be too surprising, given the fact that he, was around for 7 seasons, which is more than any other Doctor. But the 1st Doctor is kind of surprising, until you realize that they just kind of cycled through companions throughout Season 3. Now, it wasn't until Season 2 that there were any companion departures, so Season 1 and the first 2 stories of Season 2 had the same 3 companions, those being Susan Foreman, Ian Chesterton, and Barbara Wright. But Susan's departure at the end of the Dalek Invasion of Earth then resulted in the arrival of Vicky in The Rescue one story later. And the 3 of them traveled together up until The Chase, where Stephen Taylor was introduced and he joined the TARDIS, but Ian and Barbara used the Dalek's time machine at the end to return home. This duo stayed together for a few stories until the end of Mythmakers, where Vicky left the TARDIS and Katarina joined, only for the Dalek's master plan to happen one story later, resulting in Katarina's death and a new companion, Sarah Kingdom, arriving, only to die at the end of that story too. That story, gosh dang, that story is so grim. Makes you really wish it wasn't missing 75% of its episodes, though. Especially that Christmas special in the middle. And then through the rest of Season 3, we saw the arrival of Dodo, the departure of Stephen, the departure of Dodo, and the arrival of Ben and Polly. Which means that we had both 5 companion departures and 5 companion introductions all in one season. That is a lot for one season. Even though that one season is around 40 episodes long or so, that is still a lot for one season. But once it was just Ben and Polly left, they stayed with the First Doctor up until his regeneration. That brings us on to Tom Baker's Doctor number 4, who of course tied for the most number of companions, and also had the most number of seasons as the Doctor. Now 3 companions from the 4th Doctor era were carried over from his predecessor, the 3rd Doctor, those being Sarah Jane, Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart, and Sergeant Benton. But while the Brigadier and Benton both made only a couple of appearances during the 4th Doctor era, Sarah Jane stayed on for a little over 2 seasons. And the 4th Doctor's era also saw the appearance of companion Harry Sullivan, who traveled throughout season 12 before leaving in Terror of the Zygons. Then, after Sarah Jane's departure, we got the first ever story without a companion, the Deadly Assassin. Then, the Face of Evil brought us Leela, who was around with the Doctor for the introduction of the greatest fictional dog of all time, K9, before Leela left at the end of the Invasion of Time. And while technically speaking, K9 Mark 1 left with Leela, and Mark 2 was introduced one story later in the Ribos operation, I'm counting K9's Mark 1 and 2 both as the same companion, because they're both K9. There's not really any difference between the two, aside from which companion they left with. But speaking of companions, after the departure of Leela, the Ribos operation then saw the introduction of Romana. And while technically Romana did regenerate in Destiny of the Daleks for unknown reasons, Romana 1 and Romana 2 are still the same character, just with a different face, much like how the Doctors are all the same person, but with a different face each time. So, once again, I'm only counting them as one companion, instead of 2 separate ones. But Romana stayed up until the events of the E-Space trilogy, where Full Circle saw the introduction of everyone's favorite companion, Adric. You know, totally the most popular companion of all time. And then Warriors Gate saw the departure of Romana, as well as the second departure of K9. And then after that, the 4th Doctor would just have 2 stories left. The Keeper of Traken, which introduced Nissa, and Logopolis, which introduced Tegan, both of whom, alongside Adric, stayed for the 4th Doctor's regeneration and joined the 5th Doctor. So that's gonna be it for this ranking. Let me know what you think in the comments, what companions are your favorites and least favorites for each Doctor, and what your overall thoughts on the video are. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, dislike, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell, and I'll be back in the next video. Get ready for Doctor Who's 60th anniversary.